Well, hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So, season 13 of the Battlegrounds is about to start, and we're going to take a look at the upcoming victory track meta. And basically, I'm going to give my idea of how meta is going to work, break it down, what to look out for, and then obviously, we're going to be talking about the potential MVPs and what kind of class relationships and interactions are going to unfold here, because I do think that the last season specifically the second meta of the last season also kind of taught us a bit about this, new way Kabam wants us to play Battlegrounds a bit, and I'm personally not particularly a big fan of it, but it definitely has its implications in roster design and, your character selections. So we're gonna have an attacker buff, where each time the defender that would gain power while suffering from Petrify, Enervate, Wither, or Suppression effects, Science attackers specifically gain 20-second Fury passive, increasing attack rating by 10%, max 10 stacks, stability has 2-second cooldown, which effectively means that a lot of the Science champions will get a damage boost. That's all there is to it. Science champions are going to be more effective than normal. Then, moving on, any buff activated by the attacker has 20% chance to be nullified, giving the defender a burst of 20% power over 2 seconds. Regeneration buffs have triple the chance to be pilfered, which, again, this node specifically further kind of like largely works in favor of Science champions, because Science champions typically do not have any inherent buffs. Many of them are even immune to the precision from Dexterity Mastery, or they are fully buff immune. So this is again another node that would heavily imply, without the attacker buff, that Science champions would kind of have the upper hand in this meta. We have Heal or Hide every 12 seconds. Defender gains a regeneration buff, restoring 10% of their max health over 5 seconds. If the attacker is far away from the defender, attacker gains this regen instead. And this is kind of a double-edged sword in this meta, where if you are close to your opponent is going to get that regen buff, and they are going to obviously recover some health, thus potentially extending the fight. Or if you're far away and you get the regen buff, it has about 60% chance to get nullified immediately, and opponent's going to get a burst of power. So it's kind of like a lose-lose situation, unless there are some other forces at play, like for instance you're using Science champions with regen reversal, which again would kind of steer everything in the direction of Science champions. Ironically, I think this meta, we're not going to have Science champions be the dominant champions. It's kind of like in the second meta of the previous season, where we had Sugar Pill and Decay was insanely powerful. It was so powerful to the point that all the Sugar Pill defenders got destroyed, and as an end result, I took most of the Sugar Pill defenders out of my deck. I was running and at the end of it, 3 Mystic Champions. I took out my rank 5 Rintra, I took out my rank 2 Mangog, stuff like that. Still kept in Sasquatch and some other Sugar Pill defenders. But the point was, because Decay tactic was so strong and Decay attackers destroyed Sugar Pill defenders much faster than they normally would, there was very little point of running tactic defenders, and you were more focused in running defenders that the tactic attackers can't take. And therefore, by extension, then you were drafting less tactic attackers often, and everybody kind of ended up avoiding or playing very cautiously with the actual intended buffs and nodes here. I do think that the situation here could unfold similarly. So obviously, at the very least on paper, right, we're going to have Void has Petrify. He's going to do much better offensively because you can put on the Petrify. He's going to get a ton of passive Furies. You're going to be doing a ton more damage. So Void's going to be a great defender attacker. We have Sandman, who can benefit from the node. We have Titanium. We have Photon. Immortal Abomination. Quicksilver, who does very well with attack modifiers and becomes significantly more powerful. And we're going to have Morbius, who can keep Petrify on for a long time. Or Mr. Fantastic. Or Joe Fixit. And all of these champions in Science class and more will be more powerful than normal. Therefore, it is worth taking a look at them, right? We have Morbius, we have Photon, we have Titanium, we have, even, OG Spidey, when there's going to be a ton of Science champions that are very, 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 very strong. But because of it, to counter that, we probably should expect a lot of skill shrug of champions to be used as your primary defense. Shield is a brand new champion to the game. Not many people know her animation. She has cleanse mechanics, so we're probably going to see her being placed on defense quite a lot. We're going to have Zemo, just so annoying science champions can't deal with it too well. We're going to have champions like Atuma, Killmonger, Kingpin. We're going to talk about Kingpin a bit more, but Korg and Mantis and Mole-Man. And we're going to see a lot of defense being rallied behind these champions. Because, for instance, if you put down Mantis on defense, all science champions are kind of screwed, with possible exception of like Red Hulk or something. Maybe Red Hulk pretty much. And that is going to be the most and quickest and most efficient way how to counter these science champions that have increased damage capacity. So this bit is going to be vital. You will need some science champions, but again, I'm going to explain why you will not want too many of them. Because the decks will naturally be built to counter science champions because they are the strong ones with a target on their back. So you can add a lot of skill champions. And what happens then? Well, obviously, then you need some other class champions or some champions that are powerful against skilled champions in order to deal with the defensive threats. So obviously, people will be looking at some buff, not heavy, mutant champions. So we're going to have like Domino, because Domino has no problem destroying like Nick Furies and Kingpins and whatnot, and she's going to be an amazing two-way champion for sure. We're going to have Bishop, because, if you can avoid the buffs from Bishop, he's going to be doing extremely well against like Korgs and whatnot. And then we're going to have Archangel as a perfect champion, as a perfect counter for a ton of those skill champions, potentially Havoc, and potentially also Toad, because Toad is incredibly powerful, also has heal mitigation abilities with poison, which I think also is going to be quite important for a few reasons that we're going to look at in a second. So I do expect to see these mutant champions in decks much more than perhaps others would, but that, purely stems from the fact that skill class will be the dominant or go-to defense for many, at the very least initially. And with that, you're going to need like good options to counter it. It's not going to be obviously just mutants. There will be other champions that deal very well with the skill champions. If I look at my matchup sheet, where is it? If I look at the matchup sheet that we have been working on, there are Cosmic. Well, Cosmic is the class that's going to get bullied the most, but we're going to have some tech champions, for instance, like Vision, that deals with several of the skill champions quite well and is Nullify immune. It's going to function fantastic. We obviously have the mutants. We're going to have some other skill champions being utilized to deal with that. And we're going to have some mystics, potentially like Absorbing Man, putting in double time as well, as a potential defensive threat if opponent has not drafted a science champion, and him being able to answer most dominant skill defenders is going to play a role as well. And then we're going to have to kind of fill up the rest of the decks. I think also Wolverine Weapon X, Kingpin, where was the Kingpin? And a few other champions will have extra role to play of sorts. Where's the Kingpin? Here we go. Because champions who are immune to regeneration rate modification, making them immune to Petrify, will also serve as very good baits, so to speak. For instance, if somebody's trying to use a science champion to reverse the healing of, Wolverine Weapon X, or reverse the healing of some other champions, or just get that Petrify on to get those Furies, and then not being able to do so, it's going to be quite important. Not to mention that in the generic fights themselves, the most common strategy would be keep close to the opponent so they get the regen buff, and then mitigate the regen with like Despair Mastery or Petrify or something like that. And that is something that will not really work against likes of Wolverine Weapon X or Kingpin or Toad as well, for instance. So I do think that will play a fairly significant role there. As far as tech class is concerned, obviously we will still need, your regular kind of like Domino counters, your Bishop counters. So I do expect to see some Shuris. I do expect to see the 7-star Mysterios, Dark Spiders, Omega Sentinel could be a solid tech addition, being Nullify immune, a Domino, able to deal with Dominos and Bishops and Toads, and completely shutting off the regen node, because either way, if you're far from the opponent and you get the regen buff, and they can't nullify it, And if you're close to the opponent, you can probably have a heal block on the opponent to kind of like, ignore the node completely. So basically, Omega Sentinel is kind of like a perfect champion that plays like arena, effectively. So if you have big Omega Sentinel, you should probably add her to your deck. With Vision, in theory, should be quite good as well, because she does have passive heal block and she's Nullify immune. So basically the same thing, you play with no nodes. In Cosmic class, I suspect there only to be 2-3 Cosmic champions in everybody's decks. Maestro, as a new defender that not many people know how to deal with, probably going to do quite well. And even offensively, you potentially will be able to also use him because he ramps up quicker if he gets his buffs nullified. And then we have Hercules, who can do obviously decently well on defense as a stall option. And then also offensively, you can still use Hercules without, getting many buffs. And he's not like spamming or super reliant on the buffs. So I think Hercules will work just about fine. Galen is Nullify immune, so Galen is arguably going to be the best Cosmic champion for this current meta. And I don't think we're going to see too many Mystic champions running around, but Sasquatch with his massive health pool is still going to be relevant. I do think that somebody like Diablo is going to be quite important because of his access to poison. So if you do have big Diablo, it might be worth considering to run him, because against many champions whose regeneration rate will not be able to be reduced, he's going to perform better because you can be aggressive, you can give those regen buffs to the opponent and then completely switch them off with your poison, and then also nullify those regen buffs or let them expire to feed your Mystic Dispersion. So I think that could potentially have some value in it. Anyways, I'm not saying he's going to be an MVP. I'm just saying he has a decent shot of being quite good for this. And champions like Chavez, basically Mystic champions that do not rely on any specific buffs themselves, especially if they have power control, could do quite decent. But again, it's going to be interesting to see how balanced this entire relationship is. Again, on a pure personal level, I do not like when Kabam does this necessarily, whereas they have because these attacker buffs just seem unnecessary and redundant. Because obviously they already have the defensive nodes that push towards the advantage of some class champions, but they kind of have to just nail it down with these attacker buffs, which again will create the dynamic of drafting a counter to a counter for a counter. And if in previous season it was you get completely screwed and you can't do the fight at all if you don't have the appropriate counter, in this meta is just going to be, the speed race, nuke race of who drafts faster counters to each other's champions. At least that's how I see this meta unfolding in the victory track. But, who knows, maybe it'll be fun, maybe I'll love it. But those have been my thoughts about the MVPs of upcoming season. Let me know what you guys think, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about